Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I am very excited because we are starting now a series on one of my personal favorite philosophers of all time, and of course I'm talking about the man, the legend, Plato. Yes, Plato. So Plato is, first of all, my specialization, let's say, the philosopher to whom I have devoted most time and study, but also, if you press me, I would say he's in the top 3 of the most important philosophers of all time. So in this video, we will explore an introduction to Plato. This is the first video in a series of videos that I will dedicate to Plato. And in this video in particular, you shall learn first who the guy was, who Plato was. Then second, why is he so important for the history of philosophy? And third, what were the main doctrines or the main ideas that make Plato especially famous. So, well, I can't wait to start. So, welcome and let's begin. So, as I was saying, I'm very excited. Plato is by far one of the most influential philosophers of all time, as I was saying. And, well, you may wonder why, right? So think of this. In any philosophical branch or philosophical debate, most likely there will be something that could be labeled as Platonic, or a Platonic opinion, or an opinion that Plato could have said himself in a debate in philosophy. Take, for instance, I don't know, political philosophy, ethics, epistemology, metaphysics, aesthetics even. Plato would have something to say. He has a position on those things. And when I was saying that he's the most influential, well, think of, for instance, Christianity. Christianity owes a great deal of its metaphysics to Plato. Without a Platonic, let's say, metaphysical frame, it would have been very difficult for Christianity to, take the ideas that are very characteristic of them and make them, spread across the West. And I think it's easier for us to imagine that the influence that Christianity has had in the West in particular, imagine that all of that was possible in an intellectual realm, mostly thanks to Plato. So that's some of the, we can say, some of the most evident kind of influence that Plato has. But on the other hand, there's something that is often understated, or people don't tend to pay attention to this detail, but we could actually credit Plato one of the most important discoveries of all time, if not the most important discovery of all time. Not many people claim this, but I fully agree with the claim that says that we owe to Plato the discovery of abstract objects. We, as this series develops, I hope to persuade you how important the discovery of abstract objects is. But Plato was the first one to realize, well, there is a world, let's say, or there is a group of entities or things that exist that are independent of our thought processes. And second, they do not belong to space and time. It sounds a bit weird or almost mystical, right? But maybe some people may be persuaded if I say, well, mathematical objects, I don't know. Some people claim that they exist independently of us because the truth of mathematics, even if all the humans die, they remain here. 2 plus 2 equals 4, no matter if they're humans or not. So some people have claimed that, okay, there are numbers that exist by themselves. They're independent of our cognition, of our thoughts about them. So this position in philosophy of mathematics is called Platonism. So the discovery of abstract objects, the thinking that there are objects that are only accessible through our thought, but they're independent of us, that is distinctively Platonic. And the fact that we now can think of abstract objects is something that we owe to Plato. Plato was the first one to posit abstract objects in its own right, and myself included, few people have considered this one of the most important discoveries of humanity in its entire history. So, even in the 20th century, there was a mathematician, philosopher called Alfred North Whitehead, who has, I think, one of the most famous quotes referring to Plato. And it said something like, well, the safest generalization that we can make of the European philosophical tradition is that it is a series of footnotes to Plato. And this highlights what I was telling you at the beginning, that anything that you can say in philosophy, well, Plato said it first. So he is clearly not the first thinker, let's say, in the chronology, right? But he's the first to systematize philosophy in a way that all the topics that you could talk about are already framed and ordered, or at least the topics touched, right? In a way in which all the philosophers that came after him owe to his works the possibility of even debating this. Okay, so Plato is indeed one of the most important figures of all time in philosophy. As my mentor, let's say, or one of the most influential professors I had when I was an undergrad student, I was taking the course of Plato with him, and he said a phrase that I never forgot, that is, well, when you're doing philosophy, you can do philosophy with Plato or against Plato, but never without Plato. As simple as that. So whenever you're having your positions in philosophy, you need to consider what Plato thought or what Plato would have said. It's not mandatory, of course, in the actual practice of philosophy nowadays, but most likely in any topic or any debate that you engage in, there will be a position that will be Platonic. In some debates, it will be more relevant. In others, like very easy to dismiss. But Plato would have said something, and that's very relevant. And we are still commenting on this 2.5 millennia after he lived. So, as for Plato, the word in this case in ancient Greek is Platon. Platon, and Plato's real name was in fact Aristocles. Aristocles, son of Aristo. So, why Plato then? So the word Plato is said to come, and I said is said because there's, it's very difficult to have certainty about this information, biographical information from so far from the past, in the past. But it said that, okay, the word Plato would come from the adjective platus, and platus means broad or wide. And, well, the actual speculation, the theory is that, well, Plato, indeed, he had a very wide torso. You know, some people said that he was a wrestler himself, so a very wide torso, and he was called, Platus, Platon, because he had the wide torso to show off, let's say, to show. And, he went down into history as Plato. The other biographical thing that, of course, we cannot be 100% sure, but it said that he was a playwright. So he used to write dramatic plays, and one day he met Socrates at the market, he said, and upon listening to what Socrates had to say, he thought, okay, that's it. He grabbed the plays he had written and he put them to the fire, committed them to the flames, as some philosopher in the modern times said. So after doing that, he said, okay, this is rubbish in a way. And he thought, well, I'm going to devote my life to philosophy. And actually, yes, Socrates is the most influential figure. I think it's unanimously agreed that is the most influential figure for Plato. Socrates dies in a trial in the year 399 BC. And this event had a huge impact in Plato's life. So from that moment onwards, Plato composes it is believed to be the first work of his, which is called the Apology of Socrates. The Apology of Socrates is just Socrates' defense at the trial. He was accused first, and then convicted for corrupting the youth, and second for being impious. That means that he didn't believe in the gods of Athens, in the gods of the city. And these were two major crimes. Plato describes Socrates' defense at the trial and his later conviction. In the end, Socrates is executed as a penalty. He's found guilty, and this is perceived as Plato and for most of the history of philosophy as one of the greatest injustices that has ever happened to philosophy. So it's Socrates' death what prompts Plato into developing his own philosophical career, we could say. And we can see this from his actual works. His works, we keep a good deal of them, and most of them are in a dialogue format. So you may think, well, a dialogue, what kind of text is this? Well, if you read modern philosophy, for instance, they are essays, and we are all in the modern times used to essays, right? So you have a text, you argue it, you have an introduction, the body of the argument, and then a conclusion. Plato instead had characters to play together and converse, they dialogue across the text. So we get to learn Plato's thoughts through his texts in which characters are talking to each other, which is a very, very original way of conveying ideas. So this is the famous dialogue format, and in most dialogues, Socrates is one of the characters, and not just one of the characters, but the main character in most of Plato's dialogues. So, based on this, it is also said that in some points Socrates conveys what Plato is actually thinking, but it is always debatable depending on the dialogue we are talking about. So, based on this, we can divide Plato's works, or Plato's philosophical life even, in three stages. They're not very originally called early, middle, and late. So in the early period, which is also called Socratic period, we see dialogues of Plato that characterize what Socrates actually was doing when he was alive. And they are also called aporetic dialogues, which comes from the Greek word aporia, which means, it could mean problem, but literally is aporos, that there's no exit, there's no solution to the dialogue. So, for instance, these dialogues are characterized by Socrates just coming and saying, asking to a person, okay, what is virtue? Or in another dialogue, okay, you tell me, what is beauty? So it is the what is X, as it is labeled normally in manuals and academic texts. So Socrates wants to know, well, okay, what is X? What is this thing in particular? And they try different strategies to address the issue, and Socrates tries to refute or tries to challenge the answers that he's getting. And by the end of these early dialogues, there's no solution. We don't know, spoiler alert, sorry for that, but we don't know what virtue is, we don't know what courage is, we don't know what piety is, anything, you name it. So that would be the early period. But now the middle period is normally to be said that there is a solution. And this solution is normally framed in what is called the theory of forms or theory of ideas. And I'll tell you about it in a bit. So this would be now Plato positing a solution to the problems that were first framed in the Socratic dialogues. And then in the late period, which is also called dialectic period, Plato seems to criticize his middle period and the theory of forms or ideas. And then he starts developing a more, as I was saying, dialectical method in which, by means of division and synthesis of the concepts, he was trying to reach at definitions which would enable him to understand the concepts that he was investigating. So that as a general frame. But now, what are the main doctrines? Right? The main doctrines that Plato held is, as I was saying, the theory of forms. That's one of them. The theory of forms, or also theory of ideas. And please, when I say idea, do not think of these thoughts that we may have in our minds, right? The theory of ideas is, the word idea comes from Greek and has a particular meaning that we will explore in some other videos. But then this theory of forms or ideas is just positing the existence of forms or ideas as independent abstract objects. And you may wonder why, right? So a very classic problem in Greek philosophy is the problem of one over many. That's the name. Hen epi polon in ancient Greek. And this problem says, let's say, for instance, we have many red things, right? So you have one red thing here, one red thing there, a third one over there. But we may claim, okay, these are three different things, but we are calling all of them red, one thing. For the Greeks, this was like mesmerizing because the same thing could be one and many at the same time. Think of all the concepts like good, something good. We see something good here, something good there, something good there. Three good things. We call them all good, right? But by means of what property are we saying that these three things are one, right? So how can we explain that? So the theory of forms comes to answer this question by positing forms. So for Plato, there would be the form of goodness, the form of the good. So the form of the good gives the existence and knowability to all the good things. That would be Plato's solution. And why, you may wonder, and we will explore this in more depth in future videos, I promise. But think of this. For Plato, in order to have knowledge must be about something that exists, first of all, and it must be stable. So if we include like modern science in this example, think of a dog. So the atoms that compose a dog are always in flux, right? They're moving. The matter that composes the dog is always changing. So when you see the dog in 1 second, and you see it in 5 seconds later, the material constitution of the dog is different, right? This is a very modern way of explaining this, but so you get the idea. It's different. So can we say it's the same dog? How can we say it's a dog even? So we have a dog here, I have a dog there. They're all in flux. But what allows us to claim that they're one thing, namely dog? So the solution of Plato, he never says this example, but it would be the form of dogness, let's say, the form of dog, which would give the property of being a dog to all of the dogs, right? And the form is stable, does not belong to space and time, and we can access it through our souls, which would be like like the mind in this example. So that's the main doctrine and the one that made Plato most famous. But he has others, like for instance, the immortality of the soul. He would claim that the soul is immortal, and by soul we need to understand the principle that makes us being alive, right? But also for Plato, it would have intellection and it would have parts. But one of the main properties it would have is that it is immortal. Therefore, when we die, when this body dies, the soul remains, and it would go metaphorically to this heaven in which all the forms exist. And the soul would contemplate all these forms and would always know all of the forms. However, when incarnating in a body, it would forget. And this gives us the third doctrine that I want to highlight in this introduction, is that learning, in fact, is remembering. So the soul is immortal. It comes again. It is implanted, let's say, in a baby. In a newborn child, and as we grow up, when we are learning things, Plato claims we are not actually learning from scratch, but actually when we are learning something and we recognize something as true, what in fact is going on is that we are remembering something that we always knew, that our souls always knew, which is a very beautiful image of what knowledge is, and very polemic as well. So yeah, learning would be just remembering. So these are just three of the many doctrines that Plato held and that made him famous. And I think you can get an idea now why was he so important, relevant, and you can grasp a bit of the impact that he had. And, well, that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening the whole lecture. I get very passionate when I start talking about Plato, because he's really, really one of the most important figures, and I think it is very obvious from this video that I like the guy very much. But yeah, so this will be a series of videos on Plato and in particular his philosophy. We shall explore first in the series the role, let's say, of Socrates for Plato and what we would call, for instance, the Socratic problem. And we shall explore the dialogues in order. I hope to cover at some day all of them, but I'll try to cover the main ones of each period at least to have some sort of comprehensive account of each of the periods of Plato's thought. So please, if you liked this video, give it a like the thumbs up, subscribe, please, share, comment. If you have any questions, please just type them down in the comments and in the comment section, and I will reply to you as soon as I can. I hope you liked it. Suggestions are available on the main page of the channel. There's like this community section. You can go there. And yeah, please stay tuned for the next videos on this series. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks very much for watching.